ship it. So it's not that, America is going to benefit if Chinese consumers start spending. It's not like we're going to start exporting a lot more stuff. We're going to suffer because what's going to happen is that Chinese are going to start consuming the products that they used to send us. And then we're going to have to do without those products. That's what McLaughlin doesn't seem to understand, that the only reason we can consume all these Chinese products is because they're not consuming. And if they consumed more, it wouldn't mean that we would still get all that stuff and they would buy our products. We don't have products to sell them. They would buy their own products, and we would be SOL. We would just have our paper money and massive inflation. But it's just amazing that this is the way people think. And he's an intelligent man. I mean, he's and this is how he views things. And this is an attitude that is very prevalent, very pervasive. And obviously, how can we even begin to deal with these problems if this is how people think? If this is what's going on in Washington, this is the thought. It's absolutely nuts. We are going to learn a very, very hard lesson here in America. Hopefully, we actually learn it and we do something about it because things and times are going to get extremely difficult here, as evidenced by the employment data that came out since our last program on Friday. We had another abysmal jobs number, another 650 or almost 700,000 Americans lost their jobs. The unemployment rate is up to 8.5%, and of course in many states it's already above 10%. Now, if the government is admitting that unemployment is 8.5%, we all know it's got to be over 10% nationwide because they don't count, all the people who are looking, underemployed, people who are working part-time, who want to be working full-time. Somebody that, lost a job as an engineer and took a part-time job at McDonald's while he's looking for another job, that person is not considered unemployed because he's collecting a minimum wage paycheck from McDonald's. That's ridiculous. And, of course, there's a lot of realtors who are not unemployed, but they're not making any money because they're not selling any houses, but they're independent contractors. So they were never employed, and so when business goes down, they're not unemployed. They're just underemployed because they're not making any money. And then, of course, there's all the people that have simply thrown up their hands and given up and aren't even bothering to look for work. And, I found out a cousin of mine down in Florida, apparently he's been living on unemployment now for over a year, and they keep on extending it. And apparently now you don't even have to show up. I remember the one time in my life I collected unemployment. I was, in my 20s in L.A., and I used to actually have to go down to the unemployment center and basically, swear that I was looking for jobs, and I had to put down on a sheet of paper some of the places I had gone and who I had talked to or where I had interviewed. You had to do something, which made me occasionally actually go out and look for a job. I actually did go on a couple of interviews just so I can actually say I was looking for work when I really didn't want a job. I wanted to collect my unemployment benefits. I was young and it seemed a good deal. I'd rather get the unemployment benefits and lie on the beach than have to go get a job. And apparently this is what my cousin is doing, but now it's so much easier because you don't even have to show up. You just do it online. You don't even have to, so if you want to lie and pretend that you're looking for work, you don't even have to lie to somebody's face. You just type in a computer. So it's so much easier now. So I'm sure there's plenty of people, although if you're actually collecting unemployment benefits, I guess you are counted. So I guess that defeats my analogy. But the problem is there's a lot of people who are not looking for work and not collecting unemployment benefits, and they're not being counted because they're simply discouraged workers. And there's a bunch of those, and there's going to be more of those. And, the big problem is, because the government is interfering in the economy the way it is, people who are losing jobs in the portion of the economy that's going to contract, like the service sector, the government is making it very difficult for them to get new jobs because the government is stifling innovation and preventing capital from being rerouted to the employers of the future by propping up the failed employers of the past. This is the problem. It's okay if people lose their jobs, so long as they're able to get another job. But what the government is doing is making sure that when people do lose their jobs, they've got nothing to turn to. And this is what's going to be so problematic about this inflationary depression is there's going to be so many unemployed people. And in contrast to the unemployed people of the 1930s, who at least saw the cost of food and energy going down, Americans unemployed in this depression are going to watch costs spiraling out of control. You know, it's interesting. Another prediction that I made in Crash Proof, I just happened to see validated today on the evening news. There was a report on a website that is showing people how to sew clothes and how to, instead of going out and buying new clothes, to make your own new clothes out of your own used garments, how to cut them up and how to strategically sew this and snip that and make your own garments. And it was getting very popular, and their views had doubled, I think, from 500,000 to 1 million viewers. And this is one of the things that I said was going to happen. One of the industries that I said was going to come back in Crash Proof, and again in my little book, was sewing and seamstresses. And I said that a dying art is going to come back. And that's going to grow, because one of the reasons that Americans keep buying new clothes is because cheap clothes are coming in from China, because the Chinese aren't buying, they're not spending. Well, when the Chinese start spending their money, they're going to buy a lot more clothes, which means they're not going to have all the clothes to ship to us, which means clothing in America is going to be a lot more expensive. And of course, the entire garment industry is no longer in this country. We used to make all of our stuff ourselves. Now everything we make is imported. And of course, as the cost of imports goes up, more and more people are going to follow this new trend of sewing. And if you know, clothes are ripped, you don't just simply buy new clothes, because that's going to be a lot more expensive. You repair the clothes you have, or you find ways of turning out of fashion garments that are outdated into a new fashionable garment yourself by sewing and cutting. And again, you know, slowly but surely, all the things that I was forecasting are starting to come true. And again, this trend is going to get bigger and bigger. And of course, you know, other trends that I predicted, you know, people are going to start growing more vegetable gardens in their backyard as the price of vegetables go up, particularly as people are unemployed. I mean, when you're unemployed and the cost of food is going up, you have a lot of spare time to farm your backyard. And so a lot of people are going to start doing things themselves, do it yourself. And of course, one of the benefits of doing things yourself is that you don't pay any income taxes on that. So if you go out and pay a farmer, if you earn money and then buy food from a farmer, you have to pay taxes on the money that you earn. If you don't have a job and spend your labor in your backyard growing food, then when you eat the food, there was no taxes. You didn't have to pay tax on that labor because there was no paycheck that you collected. So, you know, more and more people are going to start doing things themselves, fixing things themselves out of necessity. Anyway, let me quickly go to the phones. Let me see who's calling in. Oh, very light callers today. I've got Scott in New York. He's on the line. If you want to call, most of the lines are free. The number is 888-678-9597. 888-678-9597. Go ahead, Scott.
Okay, Pete. One question. I went to a local bank and to exchange U.S. dollars for Canadian dollars. And they said, no problem, but we want 9% for our cut. My question is, how do you trade paper dollars for paper Canadian dollars at a wholesale rate when you're dealing with $10, $20, $30, $40, $50,000 at a trade?
Well, who's trying to charge you 9%?
Well, in this case, it was a TD bank, but I tried several, and basically what's going on is these banks are all set up for foreign currency exchange at the retail ripping off traveler rate.
Yeah, well, that's absurd. I mean, the costs that we have when we trade currencies, and we pass those costs on to our clients without a markup, is 15 basis points. So if somebody is going to send $10,000 to me, and we're going to buy $10,000 worth of Canadian dollars, which at the current exchange rate might be about 12,000 Canadian dollars, it would cost about $15. And
wait,
that's
are you
about
talking about Euro Pacific?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
now
So
I'm
if you want,
because I called Euro Pacific and they said that they don't do that.
No, we do it. I mean, when we buy you of Canadian stock, implicit in that is we buy you the currency. Now, from time to time, from certain clients, if you just want the currency and you don't want the stock, then we will buy you the currency. But we're not going to buy you the currency and then ship it out. We're not a bank. But if you want to hold Canadian dollars in your account, right, just leave them there, then you can buy them and just let them sit in your account. But you can't just send money in, get Canadian dollars,